Hello, welcome to another video by the chatty British lad called Harlan. And today we're talking a lot about Kiwi. I'm really excited for set 9 when I'm going to just sort of dive right back into Kiwi. Of course, right now I've just felt with Ambersteel aggro and Blurple being so relevant and strong and just I've always been the choice for me during set 8, but in set 9 of course I always want to go back and try and push Kiwi as far as I can because I feel like me and Justin and people who watch these videos playing the deck don't do it, then no one else will. So it's just really fun to get to go back to the list. But some people also mentioned like they want to bring it for the last weekend of store champ, so I was just going to do a quick little rundown of like playing the set 8 version of Kiwi that I've been promoting, and then we'll go into some of the cards that are revealed for set 9 and that I'd be putting into my set 9 wishful thinking list that I can put on the screen here. We've got a few cards to cover there, so I will try and timestamp it if I remember. I'm terrible at remembering, sorry. But just know the first half of the video will be about set 8 Kiwi, and then we'll go into the set 9 wishful thinking ideas. But so this is the list that I've been promoting for set 8 Kiwi. And as I mentioned, like I'm not going to pretend that I'm hyping it more than any other list. Like, of course, I've been hyping Blurple and Amber Steel on the channel quite a bit. I just felt they were so strong. They had such good matchup spreads. They're so consistently, like Blurple is a consistent powerhouse. Amber Steel is just a complete high roll, like powerful deck as well, just huge power spikes. And the reason why I dropped Kiwi mainly was because I was finding a lot of the red matchups were just unwinnable. Peter Pan Shadowfinder was making the game so tough because we don't run a particularly large amount of steel removal. And we got the fire, the cannons, and strength, but they're also kind of awkward to get out there. So we couldn't really put some fear into Peter Pan, Iago, and things like that. But besides that, I've noticed less red, to be honest with you, performing at store champs, and it's only really green purple with Peter Pans that would be left, but their lists are always all over the place and they've got one-offs and everything. So I think the deck, actually, to be honest with you, run it on the weekend and I'm pretty sure it could win some store champs for you, just the way I've seen everything shape out. But I think it does have a bit of a problem into Ruby Amethyst Shark decks, and Ruby Sapphire on the draw always feels quite hard to try win those games, especially Ruby Sapphire Shark Workshop. I think is very much a match you can 2-0 there. But yeah, the list is very much the same as you've seen in previous sets. The cards that we include is Jafar and more Fire the Cannons, and a one-off Desperate Plan, just because that was a card that we're really excited for this set. And it's just because of the uninkable count, it's been hard to fit it into the list, but I think as a one-off that's kind of fine. You've got Mulans in there to discard and draw cards. So the matchups that I've been seeing mainly, and I'll cover them, is that we'll cover Blurple and we'll cover Amber Steel. We'll cover the Ruby matchups in general, and then we'll cover the discard matchups in general. So the first one is Blurple, and I'll admit, again, this because of the aggro playstyle of the deck. The biggest thing I always say of Kiwi was on the play, it felt like there was really no matchup you couldn't win. Ruby Amethyst or decks that utilize Peter Pan kind of changed my mind on that a bit, because they were able to just tempo swing by play the Peter Pan. If you're not able to answer your strength with the Raging Fire, which is really the only like applicable answer we could put in the deck for it, you can do much, and then everything they play after that just has value. Iagos, genies, everything. Maui Sharks just come in with rush value. Into Blurple, like most standard Blurple lists, don't really run Peter Pan, and to be honest with you, because of their curve, they'll have to ramp on 2. Then when would they be setting up this Peter Pan, because they want to be playing the Genie into Elsa into Belle? They don't really get to play it, so I still feel it's a matchup on the play. You can just out tempo. It requires they get quite a large amount of bells on the board early, and say if you went 2-drop Smee, turn it sideways, they'll just take that trade and the bell's gone and you've gained your 2 lore, and you can continue on and do an Alice Pluto. And what are they going to do? Play a Genie, and then they have to figure out the maths on what they want to be removed from the board, because they'll have to run it into the what's it called, the Pluto to be removed, and that's going to take either a Genie or an Elsa to do that. If they're lucky enough to get a Tipo down, maybe you want to fire the cannons that just to keep it so they can't run Tipo into there. Or you can just wait a turn and play Cogsworth, pray they don't have an Elsa. Set it all up so Tipo wouldn't be an answer for it, and you can just be obnoxious and questing. One of the matches I lost when I played Blurple in Italy was against Kiwi. He had a ramp-based build, but it did very, very well. He just built up this big board. I wasn't drawing any elses, and my Hades were locked off from the game because, of course, the targets that I want to remove on the board, like Alice, has Ward, Alice, and Cogsworth. So building up this huge board, quest for 12 lore. I can't really do the maths to remove anything with foxes. Foxes aren't going to take out Alice, so it's requiring me to hit with 2 characters. So I think the matchup on the play for sure can be very much a challenge. You're very much an easy win, sorry. On the draw, just because the way it ramps into just playing advantage, they'll get to ramp that turn earlier and just be playing bigger stuff every turn. And to be honest with you, sometimes they could just race you with the genies that they play earlier on. But, on the play, you just want to do your same game plan, 1 drop, 2 drop, Alice, Pluto. And if you're very lucky, sing the strength onto Belle or Genie. Keep the board as clean as you can. So when you get the Alice, Pluto lock applied, you can just race for game. And then you could even keep everything upright and do, 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, Cogsworth down, then full quest, make their maths horrendous, and up to 3 of your characters, Alice, and then whatever you give ward to, most likely Pluto, and Cogsworth, all of those things have wards, so their Hades are locked off from the game. They can't use Bell to move damage over. Everything will be turned sideways, but Elsa can't exert warded characters, so maybe if you're protecting a Gantu for another turn or something like that, they can't touch that. So you have all those things, and if you're able to sing strength and remove a genie from the board, if you're lucky enough to get 4 wide, and that's sometimes why it's good to keep things upright, so you can sing strength and have those 4 characters on the board. And just get the damage out there, remove either Bell or Genie. They will have such an awkward time trying to win the board back and remove your things whilst you'll just be questing out. And then it will get to a point where it's remove everything that you get off the top. And if you get a Cogsworth off the top and you're 2 lore away, you can just put that down. I think it's not a matchup where Mukduk Mana really shines, but if you somehow have managed to go 3 characters wide, say, and remove their Genie or their Bell, and then you just want to apply some more pressure and just change it up a bit, put a Mukduk Mana down, because they're going to have to build their board up, then they're going to have to swing in, and now they've got 2 things, you're splitting the threats there, 2 things to swing into. So I think it's all about keeping the board very clean and tidy early on, because the likelihood is they just do Bale if they're very fortunate, Tipo, Genie into Elsa, and if you remove one of those things and you get a Pluto set up, you have a very strong board there where it's requiring them to do very awkward maths. The minute Cogsworth's down is amazing, and then later on in the game, if you top deck an Alice and then you top deck a Gantu, you can quest Alice, give Gantu ward, and that will be 6 lore that probably is just going to win you the game on the spot, because you hopefully should have raced ahead a bit at the start. I still think it's very losable if they just Bell high roll like crazy and get Bell, Sail, Bell. That's just going to happen into Genie, into Bell, into move damage, into just destroy you. But in this matchup, I think you can keep things standing up for a little bit longer. Build up the board. Once Cogsworth's down, it really does change up everything. Their 4 strengths, their foxes, their bells, they won't be able to take out your Alice. On the draw, like I say, it's a bit trickier for that, because they'll just be doing their game plan 1 step earlier. So that might require a bit more of just double spelling, take advantage of that extra card you draw. Maybe you don't want to do the standard 1 drop into 2 drop. Maybe you want to try and do a triple 1 drop if you're very fortunate, or 1 drop, 2 drop, and then 2 drop plus 1 drop, and then maybe hard caster's strength onto a Genie and just get the advantage going for yourself. Remember, Blurple's issue is always when you can get wide, they have to deal with everything 1 by 1. The best removal they have is run a Genie in and move the damage over. Of course, that's very doable, and it's kind of backbreaking when it happens. But if you manage to get a Cogsworth down, the damage moving, of course, is still going to be 100%, but dealing the damage into things. So, if you had Smee with 1 damage on and they hit it with a Genie, it wouldn't remove the Smee. He'd only take 1 damage back. They get to move 3 damage to something else, but they might just move it to the Smee. And then in that effect, it's been a very awkward situation for them. And then at that point, they can't race ahead that fast, and you could just keep the Cogsworth there, build up an Alice, build up another Smee, another thing that's got ward maybe. And, if you want to put Wendy Darling back in the deck, and then just full quest out there. But yeah, that matchup, definitely on the play, you just do your standard lines and you should be fine. And on the draw, try and always do the thing that I suggest with Kiwi is try and double spell early, try get wider, try get more aggressive, try and present a much more powerful board. Kind of hard to do on the draw against a ramp deck, but give it your best shot. Into Amber Steel aggro, or just Amber Steel in general, I guess we're just going to put whole new world decks in there as well. I think, to be honest with you, into Steel Song, you should be absolutely fine. It's the same way it was before. The card that really is worth mentioning, I don't think it matters. This is why I'm kind of wanted to pair them together against Amber Steel Aggro or Amber Steel Steel Song. It will be Rhino. He'll be the big game changer because, in my opinion, before Rhino came out, before Rhino and Lady came out, but Rhino I think is way more important because just he's such a powerful thing on the board. Before that, the aggro, Amber Steel, like Diggy Hole versus Kiwi, always, in my opinion, felt 50-50. They had some more aggressive questers, but they wouldn't really want to quest the Daisy. It gives you card draw. We can put ward on our stuff, so it's kind of just a big battle of who's going to rumble a bit more. And then into Steel Song, they were going to set up all their singers. We're going to set up all of our ward. We're going to set up our Cogsworth. And in that matchup, I always felt very favoured that I could achieve a 2-0 with it. But the main thing that's really changed in that time matchup, so really if you want any other advice in the matchup, all my older videos covering Amber Steel should be absolutely fine. The main thing that's changed is just Rhino. And we've got the tools in here to deal with it. We've gone quite heavy on them, I think, in my opinion. Fire the cannons. Really just make sure to keep that. They might do, if it's a well-veteraned player, they might be quite very, very smart of how they do this. So they might go Daisy turn 1, knowing that they have 2 1-drops on turn 2, and they might play a Cindy and a Rhino. I think, in my opinion, keep that fire the cannons, and even if you have the option to play a Calhoun or a Smee, you just fire the cannons, that Rhino, the little 1-drop one, and then you start building the board up, Alice, Pluto, and just get that board going a bit wider, get Cogsworth out. But really, it's stopping that run. Even if it means you're going to be doing a fairly unoptimal play, maybe it might force your turn 3 into being fire the cannons plus a 1-drop because you didn't have a 2-drop in hand. I still think take it, because once that's down on the board, it's going to sing, it's going to remove things, it's going to hit things, and then heal for 2 or heal for however much from Rapunzel to get the shield back on. So it's very awkward at that point. If you get to a point where they are just going to hard play it, or imagine that they did get the shift off, the best thing for you to do is get a character with 3 strength set up. So, that's Calhoun, Smee, or Pete. Sometimes Pete might be the best because their option is to sing strength or Zeus from their Rhino. Play it, hopefully they turn it sideways, and then you can send Jafar running into, you can buff your Pete and send it in to remove the Rhino, which is just great. And of course, as well, if you've watched Dinkham Fan play, like, you can always do things like run the free cost in and then use the fire the cannons just to finish it. But make sure to do it the right way around, not the way he did it on the Worlds event. I mean, no shade by that, but it was just interesting. Yeah, you can always just run in to ping the damage, make sure that the shield is popped, as I like to say, because it feels like you're popping the shield. And then you can fire the cannons and remove the rest, because the most amount of damage you need to do to break the shield would be 3, which would leave 1 on it, and then you can take it out to remove it. So I think it's really just focusing on their Rhino not getting too much value. If they are going to go, Lady into Piglet, which is still quite an aggressive line, but to be honest with you, I always find in the aggro mirrors, it's not the one who's being the aggressor the most, it's the one who's controlling the board the most. You can still fire the cannons. I would say put the fire the cannons on the Lady, actually, interestingly enough, because I want to silence their singers. I don't mind if that Piglet turns sideways. I'm going to run my Calhoun, my Smee, one of my 1-drops, my Pete, whatever I need to remove it the next turn, and they can take their 3 lore. But, if you don't take out the Lady, they might do something like sing strength on the thing that you were going to use to take out the Piglet. So, yeah. It's just making sure their singers are quite silent, as it's always been, and then getting the Alice and Pluto set up and just getting a big ward machine going is always good as well. So yeah, in that matchup, really everything I've said before in Amber Steel should still stand. You should be good as long as you can get the wards up and get Cogsworth down. Into Steel Song for sure. That's all you're running to be doing, silence their singers, and then at that point you'll just be questing for so much lore anyway that it doesn't really matter. What they do, they can't interact with your board. You've completely locked them out. Kiwi was always really designed for a good matchup into Steel Song, in my opinion. Ward and resist is something they absolutely hate. But of course, now they have this amazing Rumbler character like Rhino who can just fight on the board anyway. So trying to make sure that isn't there is always important as well. In the aggro ones, it's like, just make sure you don't get out of the gate and they're going to triple daisy you. If they do, get the Robin Hood, get a Calhoun, get a 1-drop on the board, and then you can start trading up. Take the card draw advantage that you get from those daisies questing. And in my opinion, it's wrong to start in an aggro mirror just to start questing with daisies, because the other aggro player is just going to get a ton of card draw. If you look here, it's like 50 cards or so that are are characters, so the most likely is we're going to draw a card from it, or we're going to bottom deck a Muktak mana, which we didn't want anyway. The only unlucky thing would be bottom decking a Strength or maybe a Fire the Cannons, but overall we're probably going to be coming out net positive if Daisy's Quest. So just trying to play the absolute control situation there, and that could be as well going 1-drop Calhoun into Alice, throwing the ward up there, getting to the Cogsworth, so you make every trade better, make all of their steel removal even worse, and just silencing those rhinos. Always be thinking, if a rhino could be developed in this turn, the shift, or just hard played, what can I do? There's an amazing thing that if you could get 5 wide and sing Strength, when you've got Cogsworth out, you maybe can do that. You can get it in one shot, but sometimes we're just going to have to be creative with it, and that might be running a character in and then fire the cannons it, or the minute they turn it sideways, make use of that Jafar, rush it in, and remove it with the damage buff. And the only thing that's really changed in the matchup is just Rhino's power. Ladies made them more aggressive on lore game, but and they can go wider, but the likely chances they're going to be playing a Piglet or a Daisy. If they play out a Smee or something, that's can be a bit unfortunate, but I still think you just play a Fire the Cannons on their Lady, and then you just play another 2-drop or a Calhoun, or maybe it's a 4-ink turn, you can play an Alice and start developing your ward character, and then hopefully remove the 2-drop Smee that they play. But it won't be Lady. I think that's impactful in that matchup. They can go wider, they can be more aggressive. We play Calhouns in our deck, and we play Robin Hoods, and we play a bunch of chip damage and fire the cannons. That's fine. So it will just be the Rhino that will be most impactful. Just always keeping that silent is the best thing to do. And then the other things that mentioned against the Ruby matchups, like Ruby Amethyst Shark, in my opinion, the best thing to do in that matchup is dodge it. There's really not much you can do. I think trying to keep a Strength ready for their Peter Pan is the most important thing to do. So play your lines completely as you would normally do. 1-drop into 2-drop, Alice, Pluto, Cogsworth, try and get the board warded up and set up. Sing Strength on any Peter Pan, and always be looking at the maths that they can do. Have they got 7 ink? Can they play Peter Pan plus Iago this turn? If so, how punished will I be for that? Do I have any options to stop it? Should I be turning everything sideways? As I say, like next turn I could maybe develop a Pluto, so I don't need to turn sideways this turn. I can just keep everything ready up, and then the next turn I can full quest in, knowing if they Peter Pan and rush anything in, I can take the hit and then remove it with Fire the Cannons or whatever, and just keep the aggression going. Maybe build the board a bit wider then. And if they ever have to use their Be Prepared, I find in that matchup, because of the aggression from Peter Pan and Iago, they don't have to be prepared as much. So I find that they won't do it as much. But if they do, keep those Muktak Manners, slam them down afterwards, kind of punish them for it. Because they'll be going to an 8-ink turn the next turn. They can't play Peter Pan plus... they can't play Peter Pan plus Shark on the next turn to rush it in and take out a mana. It'll take another turn, and at that point you can maybe build up a board to saying if you want to rush in and do that 9 damage to the mana to take it out, that's fine. But I'm going to start building this board and going wider, and maybe play just another Muktak mana and just keep the lore aggression going, play some ward characters later on and win the game. But overall, I've never felt that matchup's gone great. It's one of the ones that sort of put me off the deck a bit, if I'm being completely honest, which I always like to do, is try and be as honest as I can. And on the draw, it just feels very rough. They just start the aggression out quick. They'll start setting up 1-drops into crab buff targets. If they triple 1, they can crab buff and take out a lot of things. Chernobog plus crab was always horrible for Pluto because it took it out. Playing the 4-5 the cannons does make that feel a bit better, because you can just chip away at those and start setting board full quest and make too many targets for them to target at once. Again, on the draw, just try and keep double spelling, trying to go wider, trying to apply more aggression to it. And that's all you can really do. I think that matchup is definitely one, if you're going to a store champs and you are expecting to see Ruby Amethyst Shark, I would probably just not think too much about playing the deck. With my honest opinion, I love the deck. I think that is the Ruby aspect, Ruby matchup aspect has been the hardest part for the deck. We don't have a lot of 1-drops that took quest for 2. We have none, actually. And Mr. Smear is really our most aggressive questers early on. And that would mention about the Ruby Workshop matchup. I feel like, because you have ward, and you can go wide, and then you can play Muktak Manners if they ever Be Prepared the board. You just can end up winning that matchup. They can't little Sisu things early on. They can do the big Sisu, but at that point you should be threatening some mad lethal. And if you're able to do Alice, ward, give Gantu ward, and you at 16 lore or whatever, you do that, and then you can play a mana the next turn, is just huge, and you end up winning that matchup. I feel Workshop's not one to think too much about. But Ruby, Sapphire, Shark, again on the play, just be complete aggression from the get-go. Try and get rid of any typos, because you want your Pluto to be as protected as you can. And yeah, from that point out, try and keep the Pluto safe. You know, if there's a typo, get rid of it. If it's a Grandma Tala and you can't sing strength on it, don't worry too much. And I don't really want my Alice singing strength in that matchup, because I want her questing, I want the lore from it. But if you could get your Pluto singing strength, that's pretty good. It is mad how impactful Fire the Canning's Tipo in that matchup is, though, because they will be playing it down just to pop the Pluto, whereas you want them to run a Maui into it and just remove it one for one. But yeah, just play complete aggression line out. If they have it, they have it. You know, if they have like Tipo into Tala, into Maui, into Super Goof, into Shark, you know, they're just going to beat you into Big CC. They're just going to do it. So just play your aggressive line out. If they go down the Be Prepared line, you know, keep the Peats and the McDuck Manners ready for that. But if not, you just can't be too upset with the loss in that matchup. And on the draw, again, you're just going to have to hope they miss some tempo, and you're going to have to keep the double spelling going. You know, go 2 characters wide every turn. Achieve that as much as you can. You know, 1 drop. Of course, you can't go 2 wide on turn 1, can you? But turn 2, if you can do a couple 1 drops or something like that, and then turn 3, if you could do a 2 drop plus a 1 drop, and into, you know, Alice, just to put as much lore pressure on the board as you can. And that's why I'm saying double spelling is good. You're splitting threats, but you're also putting loads of lore pressure on the board. You know, a Smee plus a Robin Hood on turn 3 is, of course, 3 lore, and then the next turn you play an Alice just off the bat, and then you can quest into a Gantu, give it ward, so they can't use their Hades and things, you know, that they've been using recently, and just trying to be basically as aggressive with the lore as you can. And that's all you can really do for the Ruby matchups, I think. And it has been something that they've just got so powerful against decks like this, where it's a great aggro deck, it's a very quick deck, but it's just a bit too slow for Ruby, whereas you know, having Lady, having Daisy, having all those cards just makes the Amber builds just so much quicker. But yeah, the final one to mention is Emerald sort of discarding decks. Emerald Steel, just do the same thing. Just run back what I've said about Steel Song minus Rhino, and you should be fine. Just you know, they'll try and attack your hand. You'll at one point of the game you probably have no cards in hand, and that's fine. If you can just go 1, 2, Alice, Pluto, Cogsworth, you just win the game, because everything's got ward. They can't discard anything. They can't Bruno anything. It's just so awkward for them to interact with anything. So you can just go like that, and you should be fine. You got so many Fire the Cannons in there. If they ever try to set up a Diablo, they'll never get any discard value, and that's all great. And I think just leaning on to the Emerald Amethyst matchup, again, you've got so many Fire the Cannons in there. It's a card they can't get rid of from your hand. You just throw it out there, take out their Diablos, and hopefully they don't get too much value from crab buffing and foxes, and always just keep out an eye for them. But that matchup can still be bad, because they do play accounts of Peter Pan, giving their 2 drops Diablos, their Iagos, their Genies. Those cards all have rush into this matchup, so it can be a bit rough. I feel a matchup is really one where it feels like the RP matchup sometimes, but there's no threat ever Be Prepared, so you can keep everything kind of standing upright until you need to go for the lore. You know, if you're really there setting up a very adequate board and you're doing Calhoun, Alice, Pluto, Cogs, then you take the full quest. But prior to that, you know, they're not going to be brawling anything. They're not going to be touching anything. They might, maybe if they're on the play, get the Elsa out and exert and remove one thing, but that's about it. You can set it up. Resist will be so painful for them. Ward will be so painful for them. You know, just throw a Fire the Cannons out to get rid of their Diablo. They might start attacking your hand with discard. But again, you're going to get to a point where you don't have any cards in hand. So setting up their Prince Johns is quite a weak thing for them to have done for the net gain of maybe 1 card off 1 sudden chill. So overall, you should be very strong there. But yeah, the only thing really to watch out for there is Peter Pan, Iago. But you're not on a race like you are with red purple. There's no race with this one, because they can't be the board, they can't see to it. So you have time to set up that ward and that resist from Cogsworth. But overall, just still don't find that great because of Peter Pan. But you know, you still have time to set up a board and just get it wider. Do the exact same lines that we do in most of these decks. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on the draw, try and apply as much pressure. It's why we do the double spelling on the draw, just because we're 1 turn behind. We can't be as aggressive, so we're just trying to apply more pressure and trying to catch up and try and negate the the negatives of going second as an aggressive deck. But yeah, those are all the little thoughts. I hope if anyone runs it for store champs, for the people that asked, which was a couple in the server, which was nice, and then I think I saw one on Twitter as well, or another Discord, I can't remember. But awesome to see people playing it still, and hopefully do well. And hitting the 25-minute mark, we go on to set 9 stuff. So this is the list that I'd sort of run, and I think, to be honest with you, I'm living in a bit of a dream trying to put Happy and the Dwarf's Mines in there. I've just noticed there's so much evasion that's going to be happening in set 9. I kind of wanted some options there, and I also didn't want to lose a location. It looks like probably Muktak Manor won't get printed again. That is just a nuts card with 9. Like 9 is just mad for a health stat. So I kind of like 7 Dwarfs Mine in there, utility one. It's always been in and out of different Kiwi builds as well. So this is the way I've been building it. Of course, looking at my videos, in looking at my list in past videos. There's a couple cards here that I want to mention and talk about putting into the list. So this is the new Cruella de Vil card. I feel like if so what it does is, once during your turn, when a character costs 2 or less is banished, put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. I don't find that too impressive. The thing that I find very impressive is opposing characters gets cost 2 or less, get -1 strength. So, you know, if we're going into this battle with, say, another Doc deck, maybe an Amethyst or an Amber Steel, Doc survives in set 9, we're going into the turn where we're going to have to start rumbling, start turning things sideways, start making decisions, and we can play this down and say, right, unless you remove this, your Calhoun now attacks for 1 less strength. Which is just great, because then you can just do better trade ups with your Calhoun. You know, you can take it out and you don't get your removed. And any of your 2 costs or less that are banished, you also get the ramp. I don't particularly care too much about that part, but just making it so your board is in effect stronger going forward. The first 2 characters they play will have negative effects on them, and then say if you're playing as a deck that maybe played Lady and then played something else out, that other thing as well was going to be minus effect. So I think it's pretty cool. I really would prefer it if it was inkable and it may be quested for 2, because there's just going to be more situations where you don't want to use this compared to when you do want to use it. And if we were playing it alongside Alice, there's very unlikely chance we want to play a Cruella over an Alice. But I still think it's kind of interesting. I definitely want to try out, maybe as a 1 or a 2 off. But I think there's just, on top of this, there's just Captain Amelia, I think, which that card, the one that gives resist, just feels more impactful than overall. So I kind of went in feeling a little bit hyped about this card. I chatted about it a little bit on the Kiwi Bird server, but, you know, I think overall it needed to be inkable. It needed to quest for 2. It just needed 1 extra little bit, which is not unlike it for Lorcana. They've never done that. They never printed a card where if it just had 1 little bit thing, I think it would be even playable. I don't think it would be broken if this was inkable. I just think it'd be a nice little tech card to be like, hey, I'm going to be facing a lot of other low to the ground matchups. I'll put some Cruellas into the list. But right now, as you can't really do that. I mean, you do run cards like Pleakley and Tipo, which are able to remove it from your hand. But the fact that it's not, I still feel that doesn't justify putting uninkable tech cards like this in the deck, because, you know, well, maybe my turn doesn't want to be Tipo or Pleakley, and Pleakley, you'd have to have played it to begin with. So yeah, that's not much better. So yeah, I feel it's interesting. I want to try it out. Probably get some, if I pack some, I play with it. But that's about it. It's an interesting one. It'd be nice to see what other people think about it as well. It has sparked a few discussions. But yeah, that's that. And then the other one to note is the Lilo card. That's a bit zoomed out, so we're going to zoom in. I picked the enchanted photo because I thought it looked pretty cool, and I liked seeing Stitch in the background. But a lot of people, you kind of noticing, if we're going to set 9 and we're losing a bit of steel removal, if we're losing things like we're keeping strength for the Raging Fire, that's fun. But if we're losing like the Stormrage on, if we're losing Zeus, and we're losing the ways to utilize those cards as well, we've kept Fire the Cannons, of course, which is great. It's kind of hard to fit this. It's kind of hard to say like Steel has this amazing removal, but this card, to be fair, with a double statted thing, and it's 3 costs, so it can sing your strength as well, and it will keep being useful on the board. I think it's just pretty cool. I think most people are playing this in a Steel list to begin with. When you play this character, your other characters gain Challenger +2 this turn. Whenever this character quests, chosen alien character gets Challenger +2 this, and this character can challenge ready characters this turn. So the first effect is great. It's just like a mini Cricky, which it's just going to be awesome for board swinging. Like if you can get some 1-drops out, you can trade up with your 1-drops rather than having to lose your 2-drop in the trade. And then later on in the game, you could maybe build the board up, play it down, and you could do these amazing trades to get rid of, you know, daisies, or just do trades that weren't possible before because you're getting that extra strength. And I think the alien thing is just one of them interesting things, like where it won't come up too often. Like I'm not adding Pleakley to the list because of this effect, but people have noticed, you know, the Steel John Silver, and there are a few other, you know, maybe if you tried the Lilo card, the Stitch card, like you just get some little bonuses that people go, oh wow, yeah, I hadn't even read the card fully, because no one usually buffs alien characters. So I think this is really cool. I'm definitely gonna have to find room for this. Of course, one issue I found is that not everything is updated onto Dreamborn straight away, but going in here, I'd probably try and make some cuts. I think this is where maybe I'd have to get rid of my location dream, or maybe not focusing on the ramp too much and try some different things out. But I think maybe the Pleakleys would go and we'd just keep the Tipo around, or maybe we'd cut back on the Baymaxes, because utilizing 4 Baymaxes has never been great. But I definitely want to try and make some room for this, and that Fire the Cannons is back. I just feel like going into the first week of the set, you kind of just want those, right, if I don't know how to play against something, I can just throw damage at it. And I think Fire the Cannons and Lilo will be pretty good for that. I think Cruella is definitely a card that just requires a bit more testing, but I do need to update this. I do need to, when Dreamborn kind of gets the set 9 cards, which would be cool. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how things are going. Of course, in my last video as well, I mentioned about the Jasmine card that I think is pretty good. I think on the play you can do the aggressive Kiwi like lines that we all know and love, and then on the draw, you know, you could ramp and put a Jasmine down and say like, hey, you know, it's not like it was in set 8 where I have to just play my characters and try to go wider than you. Like I can now just fight you and try and win the game. That way I lock you out and then start building my board up and win the game that way. So I think there's tons of interesting things going on, and yeah, just my thoughts on the few cards that have came out. I think most people are very terrified of the Dumbo card, and I think that Jasmine's quite interesting for it because she's a 3/7 and she can actually go up to 6/7, requiring a discard card. And hey, this deck bricks quite a lot, so you can discard one of the Uninkables to make your dock next turn work better. So yeah, I think there's loads going on there, and it'll be really nice. I think Kiwi goes into a really strong spot. Right now I'm getting the impression that red, or red as we know it, being the like get to a top end and be prepared type decks, you know, Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire, don't seem to really be alive. I'm pretty sure Be Prepared will still be around. I don't see why we'd get rid of it, but maybe we see red in a different light, which will be very interesting. And it'll be very good for Kiwi Steel players. But that's all my thoughts. There's some, I will hopefully remember to timestamp this as well.